So, what if Earth's most isolated, frozen wasteland actually holds the ultimate secret to human origins? Today, we're diving straight into the fascinating theories and specific evidence suggesting an ancient civilization might be buried right beneath the ice of Antarctica. It's essentially the coldest, least understood place on our entire planet. I mean, it's massive, twice the size of Australia, bigger than Europe, and holding a staggering 90% of the world's ice. For centuries, it was literally just a blank space on maps. But now, with advanced satellite tech and deep ice drilling, researchers and independent theorists are finding structures, fossils, and clues that completely challenge everything we thought we knew about Earth's history. Could this frozen continent actually be hiding humanity's forgotten past? Let's get right into it. At the absolute center of this mystery is a really incredible document from 1513. It's a map created by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis. This is honestly one of the most enduring symbols when we talk about ancient, lost knowledge. It's a partial world map with a super detailed look at South America, but the real kicker is what's at the bottom. It depicts a mysterious southern landmass. And the coastline? It doesn't look anything like the modern ice-covered Antarctica we know today. Instead, it strongly resembles what the actual landmass looks like, completely free of ice. Remember, Antarctica wasn't officially sighted by modern explorers until way after 1513. So you really have to ask, how could a 16th century mapmaker possibly know its true shape? Well, supporters of this map's authenticity argue that pulling off that level of accuracy in the 16th century would have been completely impossible without access to much older, now lost source documents. And this brings us to historian Charles Hapgood. He popularized the theory that the Piri Reis map was actually compiled using data from a prehistoric seafaring culture. Hapgood suggested that this lost civilization possessed incredibly advanced geographical knowledge, successfully mapping global coastlines, including that ice-free Antarctica, sometime between 10,000 and 4,000 BC. Now, mainstream academics heavily criticize this idea for sure, but it proposes a mind-bending possibility. Just imagine what it would mean for history if humans were successfully navigating and mapping the entire globe thousands of years before what we normally consider the dawn of civilization. To figure out if an ancient civilization, or honestly life of any kind, could have actually survived down there, we have to look at the paleobotanical evidence. And the science paints a picture of an absolutely unrecognizable Antarctica. 100 million years ago, this place was a lush, temperate rainforest. We're talking temperatures from 13 to 21 degrees Celsius, filled with meandering rivers and evergreen trees. We know this because of wild discoveries like Robert Falcon Scott's 1912 expedition finding fossilized beech leaves just 500 kilometers from the South Pole. Later expeditions even uncovered upright, fossilized trees 7 meters tall on Alexander Island. Even as recently as 12 million years ago, parts of the continent were covered in a tundra environment before the deep freeze really took over. So here is the absolute crucial point of conflict. If Antarctica was once warm enough to support life, could human civilizations have lived there? Well, mainstream archaeology firmly says no way. The current scientific consensus dates Homo sapiens back to roughly 300,000 years ago. But the oldest known samples of the Antarctic ice sheet show it's been frozen solid for over 14 million years. Based on that established timeline, humanity simply wasn't around before the ice sheets formed. According to the textbooks, the continent was already a frozen wasteland millions of years before the first human ever took a breath. Section 1. Pyramids in the ice, natural nunataks or ancient architecture? Despite that stark mainstream timeline, modern discoveries are stirring up some major debate. Back in 2016, satellite imagery over the Ellsworth Mountains captured a massive 4,150-foot peak that looks strikingly like the pyramids of Giza. Now, geologists impartially explain this through a completely natural process. They call a mountain like this a nunatak, which is simply a peak poking right up above the massive ice sheet. Over millions of years, this exposed rock gets battered by high winds and brutal temperatures. Through endless cycles of thawing and refreezing, a process called freeze-thaw weathering, the rock is literally carved into these sharp triangular faces. It's a common kind of erosion in extreme cold, creating shapes very similar to the famous Matterhorn over in the Swiss Alps. However, independent theorists are quick to point out a pretty fascinating anomaly here. Natural peaks formed by that freeze-thaw weathering usually only have one, maybe two flat faces, but this specific structure appears to have 4 near-perfect symmetrical sides. Because of that, theorists suggest this striking geometry could actually be the remains of artificial architecture, currently buried under a mile of ice. They draw comparisons to the wide bases and sloping sides of ancient pyramids we see in Egypt, Mexico, and Peru, theorizing a shared architectural knowledge from some older hidden source. They even draw parallels to the highly disputed Bosnian stepped pyramids, where smooth slopes and perfectly aligned corners are cited as evidence of prehistoric design. And you know, that geometric peak isn't the only anomaly turning up on our satellite maps. Researchers have spotted a massive, perfectly rectangular doorway carved into a rock face in East Antarctica, and some estimate it's large enough for a full-sized aircraft to just fly right in. Over on a southern island, there's a cave entrance with dark, perfectly parallel lines that look exactly like a massive staircase leading right into the mountain. While glaciologists point to ice movement, wind, and melting patterns for these formations, the sheer perfection of the geometry definitely keeps the debate alive. There are even unverified but super intriguing reports from a geological team near the Doubleday Glacier, claiming they found the ruins of a columned building, massive stone blocks, and coins stamped with bizarre animal symbols. Section 2. The Polar Shift. How a Continent Freezes. So, if an ancient civilization actually lived down there, how could a totally habitable continent freeze fast enough to entomb an entire society, especially if we're challenging that slow 14 million year glacial timeline? Well, this brings us to a heavily debated theory known as true polar wander or crustal displacement. Unlike the super gradual changes of the Earth's axial tilt, this theory suggests that the entire outer shell of the Earth can physically and rapidly move over its inner layers. This would violently shift the position of the geographic poles. If an event like this went down in Earth's past, it provides a theoretical mechanism for how Antarctica could have been rapidly yanked from a temperate zone right down to the freezing South Pole, altering its climate almost overnight. Interestingly enough, this whole concept of a rapid pole shift aligns remarkably well with a much more prophetic angle, the early 20th century visions of Edgar Cayce, famous as the Sleeping Prophet. During his trance readings, Cayce claimed that a massive shift in the Earth's axis had previously destroyed an ancient people. He also predicted that massive climate shifts were coming around again and that melting ice would one day reveal forgotten lands. He specifically stated that Antarctica, long thought to be lifeless and barren, would become fertile and inhabited again. While we are definitely stepping away from geology and into prophecy here, it perfectly echoes that core idea. A lost civilization might just be waiting beneath the frost. Ultimately, we're kind of left standing between two incredibly compelling narratives. On one hand, you have to acknowledge the sheer awe of mainstream geological deep time. The reality that this massive ice sheet is a 14-million-year-old time capsule, perfectly holding ancient atmospheric data and fossils of prehistoric rainforests. But on the other hand, we have to balance that accepted science with the enduring, mysterious allure of the Peary-Rouse map, Charles Hapgood's lost seafaring culture, and those highly symmetrical satellite anomalies. They constantly challenge our neat, perfectly packaged timeline of human history. I'll leave you with this to ponder. Antarctica is currently warming at an alarming rate, and areas that have been protected by thick ice for millennia are starting to melt. As the global climate warms and the ice recedes further, what are we finally going to uncover? Are we just watching natural geological erosion take its course, exposing some weird ancient rock formations? Or are we standing right on the brink of discovering a lost chapter of human civilization that will rewrite the history books forever?